Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Coffee with Ryan. I am Ryan, and this is Coffee, and it is Friday, May 17th. We're starting the stream a little bit late today, but that's okay. No one's here yet. Okay, people are joining, so that's good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, so this Coffee with Ryan is going to be a little bit different, I guess, just because we've got like a chisme hour. So chisme in Puerto Rico, it means basically gossip. So we've got a gossip hour. So the chisme hour. And also, I was looking into the CEO change with AWS, and I went through a bunch of different Reddit threads as well this morning as well. And I found some pretty interesting information. So I've got screenshots of all of it to kind of talk through and look at. But for those who aren't aware, the CEO of AWS has now changed. The change came in, let's see, it was from Adam Selipsky, and now it is Matt Garman. So that is now the change. And we've got a leadership announcement here from AWS. So I'll pop that open and we can look at it together. Let's see. There we go. So Andy Jassy makes the AWS leadership announcements. This is from the website aboutamazon.com. So when we think about angles and how things are being spoken about, just keep that in mind. This one is coming directly from AWS and from Amazon. So this is Matt Garman here, newly coming into the AWS CEO role. This is Adam Selipsky, who is now out. High level context of this, just to show that I actually read it. Matt came into AWS around 2005, 2006, and he was an MBA intern, and he slowly worked his way up through the organization over the past 18 years. And he was very heavy-handed inside of the EC2 org at AWS. And with that, he sort of built up a reputation in terms of being able to deliver on the initiatives around compute, until eventually they're like, hey, why don't you become the chief of sales? And he did that for a while until now stepping into the helm as CEO of AWS. Adam Selipsky, he was part of AWS previously, and then he left. He went to a company called Tableau, and he was there, and that's a data visualization company. He was there for a couple of years, and then he came back as CEO in 2020, I believe, right during the pandemic. Maybe it was 2021. We'll find out how good my memory is. And with that, he sort of filled this pretty critical role that they needed at the time with the, you know what? I know there's audio playing. Can we lower it a bit? I think it's making it hard for me to hear my inner thoughts. Okay, nice. Thank you. So with Adam, the thing that's interesting about him is that he came back to be the pandemic leadership for AWS. A lot of critical business challenges, thing they had to understand, as well as the emergence of AI into the public mainstream, main usage, main production, words that are like this. See, I could never have an MBA because I don't know how to speak to it in the proper way, but so regardless, Adam was there for a couple years, and there's some good, there's some bad. We're going to explore it. Was this a positive change when Adam came in? Should he have been the person that was promoted to the CEO of AWS? Who am I to speculate? I'm just a person from the outside. However, Reddit definitely has an opinion, and people are very in support of Matt. And other people think that maybe there should have been a more technical leader chosen. So, a little spice, a little drama, a little chisme, as you could say, a little gossip. So, I'll just kind of scroll through here. I kind of gave you all this information. CEO of Tableau for a little bit, came back. The change for Matt coming in as CEO happens on the 3rd of June. And you also might be asking yourself, why does this matter, Ryan? Why are you telling me this? Like, who cares? Well, part of it's kind of interesting just in terms of how do these large companies go through these hierarchy changes, and how do they select new leaders, and what type of leaders are effective in a technical space like this. And yeah, it's like there's the business side, there's the technical side, there's all these logistics, these human interpersonal relationships that have to happen. And also there's this kind of looming cloud over everything, a cloud over the cloud, which is the generative AI that's happened. And so I went down a deep dive of this as well this morning as well. And I was talking talking to ChatGPT, talking to the generative AI. I went to the source, if I'm going to learn about generative AI to be able to communicate it effectively, let me just go straight to the source and talk to a generative AI. So the first thing I asked is, how would I explain this to a 5-year-old? And the answer to it was, it's a magic box that creates images and stories. I think that's how it said it. So the difference between the more traditional way of doing machine learning was you would basically gather a bunch of training data. You would have to make that training data yourself or source it somehow. And then with that, you would provide it to the model. It would train over it. You would do reinforcement learning. You would basically critique it, tweak the model settings, and then eventually, ideally, you get a spectrum of results that are percentages. And it's, so in a case of, hey, is this a Coca-Cola can or a Pepsi can? I give it 1,000 photos of Coke in a different perspective, Coca-Cola that is, and 1,000 photos of Pepsi in different perspectives, different filters with shadow, different bottles, all that stuff, different kind of hidden logo, but kind of the same style as a bottle. And then with that, I can then run it through a classification machine learning model, and it should give me back an array of different percentages of what it believes. And if we only have 2 options, then ideally, let's say if it is a Coca-Cola bottle, it'll be 98% confident that it is a Coca-Cola bottle. The problem comes in is as you start spreading out the number of potential categories, the percentages get less and less gradually. So obviously we're talking about AWS chain, and I'm doing a deep dive on this already, but the high level of it, just to like kind of wrap it up, is there's a fundamental difference between that sort of classification, categorization, machine learning, and generative AI. The generative AI side is more of the creative. It can see the patterns between the different data, and it can come up with a new result that may be similar to something someone else has done, or it might be slightly different. Because sometimes that depends on the input that you're giving to it. But through that, as we've all seen and worked with ChatGPT-based systems, if you provided a prompt and you say, draw me a picture, I don't know if it's, if you're working with DALL-E, I'm saying DALL-E like in Spanish, but DALL-E, I believe it is the image generation one. So, but let's just imagine that, ChatGPT has the image generation fully working across the board, every country supported, which I believe is not fully the case yet. I can ask it, hey, draw me a picture of a horse on the side of a mountain with wings, and give it, Gothic style clothing and a church in the background. You just give it a bunch of random different inputs. It uses all those different models behind the scenes. That would be the LLMs happening there. It basically combines all these results together. It says, okay, you want Gothic clothing with a mountain with this thing, and it basically can pull that together to create this new unique result. And that new unique result is the generative part of generative AI. And why does this matter? Back to the story. As the emergence of ChatGPT and other generative AI systems started emerging, there was a critical point in time where AWS had to figure out a way to present it to their customers, create services around it, and be able to compete in the space, right? And the person that was at the helm of this happening was Adam Selipsky. I'm saying it's Selipsky. Yep, exactly. So Adam Selipsky was there. As probably all of y'all are familiar, we have Amazon Q. What is Amazon Q? Well, you can ask it a bunch of questions. I bet this hyperlinks to something, right? Let's see. We can read it from the source. There we go. A generative AI-powered assistant for businesses and developers. So what does this look like? The idea was you have documentation on side of AWS, and it knows the documentation better than a human would. And so you can ask it questions about AWS services and things like this, and it's going to give you back good answers, right? Because it has access to all that. I think we all know the release of it didn't go as hot as it should have. It wasn't as smooth sailing as was expected. And as a result of that, I don't know. You tell me. Maybe Reddit has an opinion on this as well about how does the Amazon Q launch? How does the Bedrock launch? How do these different systems play into the idea of the CEO change? And is there a connection there that that maybe or may not be? So let's keep scrolling down. AWS is still making a ton of money. So $100 billion annual revenue run, according to the past quarter here. And they're seeing year over year revenue growth. As I said here, Matt Garman, the new CEO, started as an MBA intern. He slowly worked through the EC2 org in the early product management side of things during the formative years. Also helped and operated the EBS side, which is Elastic Block Storage. Hey, I should have asked that as a quiz question. What does EBS stand for? What does EC2 stand for? Elastic Cloud Compute, right? For anybody taking the very beginner or the cloud practitioner, I think they ask you questions like that for that certification. And he's continued to rise up the ladder internally. I think it's a really cool story about Matt Garman. I just really respect somebody that comes into a company all the way at the intern level, right? And then slowly fights and proves themselves over and over and over again until they climb up to the pinnacle of the company. And that's super cool. Just in itself, I really have I think that's awesome. So that's that. That's the formal press release there from AWS. So let me load up the next one. I also read an article from TechCrunch. I was looking for, a couple different opinions about this, right? So what is the opinion of TechCrunch? Let me open these up. Okay. Oh, opened it twice, and this one too. All right, let me share my screen again. It looks like I have to drop everything into the first desktop screen. So 1 second there, pop. Okay. I'll stop sharing and open this up. Everyone. I feel like I should just share my whole screen, to be honest, but I'm not going to do that. Efficiency is telling me to lower the security requirement, but I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. Okay, let's see. Let's read this one first. So according to reporting from The Information, AWS originally planned to unveil its own generative AI model akin to OpenAI's ChatGPT, codenamed Bedrock, which eventually became Amazon Bedrock model hosting service at its annual conference in November 2022. But technical issues forced the organization to postpone the launch. Right? Ooh, one looming cloud. Is there more? Let's look. I think every time I have to click this, that's crazy. Next time, I'm going to have this way smoother. So always improvements to be made. According to reporting from The Information, which is a news source or a website of some kind, AWS originally planned to unveil its own generative AI. I just read this, and I think you guys already see it. Oh, there you go. Under Selipsky, AWS also passed on opportunities to back 2 leading generative AI startups, Cohere and Anthropic. AWS later tried to invest in Cohere, but was rejected and had to settle for a co-investment, albeit a large one, in Anthropic with the rival Google. So AWS was ahead in terms of these. They did have the opportunity to invest in both of these, but they didn't go towards that. So there we go. Thank you to Mr. Vincenzo here for staying hydrated. Forgot to drink my coffee. There's water in here, okay? We all know it. I drink my coffee, just straight coffee bean, vodka right in the morning, just to get things going. All right, next one. And the last one here. In 2023, AWS unit revenue growth slowed to record lows, and AWS underwent major layoffs as part of the broader cuts at Amazon that resulted in more than 27,000 employees being let go. Yet AWS remains the cloud leader with around 31% of the market share versus Microsoft Azure at 25% and Google Cloud at 11%. And one of Amazon's most profitable business divisions is, of course, AWS. In the most recent physical quarter, AWS generated $9.42 billion in operating income. Lots of stuff happening there. About 62% of Amazon's total. So that's a lot. AWS plays a huge role for Amazon, and that's very important to all this. Jasty recently said AWS generative AI business alone has hit a combined multi-billion-dollar run rate. So looming clouds, we're getting an idea, okay, generative AI in the background, different launches, post-pandemic, leadership comes in, maybe they didn't hit the ground running as hard as they want to, and that's kind of interesting there. All right, let me get some more of these downloaded. So let's talk about how does Reddit feel? What does Reddit feel about all this? I'm gonna open that up there, up, and this one too. Okay. All right, so I'm not going to read the usernames, but you can see them. I took screenshots just because it's easier for me. That was always the way lots of people internally were shocked when Adam came in. So obviously, if you're watching this, I am merely a proxy to Reddit, and I am not of an opinion either way. I don't know Matt. I don't know Adam Slepsky. I don't know Charlie Bell. Ooh, who's Charlie Bell, right? I don't know. Yeah, I'm just presenting the things that the community has shown or talked about. Here's another one. So it's under this interim CEO that AWS put all their eggs into the Q basket. Reinvent was a bit of a joke last year. My God, yes, it was. The DevOps jam was terrible with how hard they were pushing Q in each challenge, yet it sucked so hard and would always provide incorrect info. Yeah, so there was plenty of great releases outside the Q preview. So gosh, that's pretty hard to read. Obviously, I love AWS. And I think, customer opinions matter, right? So all these people on Reddit, their customer opinions too, they matter as well. Other things that people said, what is Q? Not even joking, I have to use AWS. I don't know what it is still. And let's see. Another person said, I'll just read it. Honestly, I was appalled when Adam was selected. Ooh, actually, maybe I can share it in this way, and then I don't have to keep switching. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I think that works. So yeah, this one's pretty rough, okay? It's pretty rough. I have no opinion here. Honestly, I was a bit appalled when Adam was selected as a customer and builder since 2009. Can confidently say that AWS was far superior prior to him taking the reins. And he asked to expand on it, but they didn't expand on it. So we don't actually know. We don't know there. So that's an issue. Let's see, other stuff that was garnered here. This one goes back to it. This person was saying, I'm disappointed that a more technical leader, e.g. Werner, is not at the helm. So this is kind of a different perspective of it. They're talking about Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI, has a CS background. We have Satya CEO of Microsoft, CS background, Dario from Anthropic, PhD in physics, and so on and so on and so on. And if you want to see what happens when MBAs run engineering companies, just look at Boeing. That's pretty pointed. So yeah. So what do we think about all this? Basically, the idea is not everyone is dead set on Matt Garman taking over as the AWS CEO. Some people wanted a more technical leader. A lot of the consensus is that not everyone was super thrilled about Adam coming in, including the idea that there was a person called Charlie Bell, which I still don't know who this person is. But the Reddit community, I'm assuming there's some Amazon people that are inside of some AWS people that are under their anonymous usernames in there giving us a little chisme. So, and also there was the talk of Steve Ballmer. So I don't know the story of Steve Ballmer, but basically to talk about the idea of lifers at a company. So when you have someone that's been at the company the entire time and they don't have that outside perspective, can they really understand the customer struggle, right? And I think that's a very interesting point, which is why I'm kind of diving into all this in general. they can help run the operation side, but can they run the entire thing, right? And only time will tell, obviously. I'm rooting for Matt Garman. I love AWS. I want them to continue to accelerate and keep pushing forward. One person does not determine the outcome of anything, obviously. However, aligning those things together is important. The cool part is that Matt comes from all the internal different teams and product teams from across AWS, and so has a very low-level knowledge of it. I definitely love Warner, and I know that he's CTO currently. Could Warner be CEO? Maybe that's not how the Amazon organization operates. They don't put technical people like that into the more business lead role. However, the AWS, like it said there, was 60% of the overall revenue, I think it said. So in some ways, the technical side is leading the business side, right? So then maybe technical leadership. I'm just thinking from the serverless side of things. So when we think about serverless and we think about Matt coming from an EC2, EBS, these sort of areas, definitely we know the majority of revenue for AWS is probably going to be coming from the compute that's more server-based, container-based, runs 24/7. Maybe it's over provisioned. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. However, serverless being the most efficient, lean, and usually, if you do it right, obviously you can do it wrong as well. And thinking from that perspective of what do we want to see more of from the serverless community, we probably want to see more innovation happening with the idea that serverless is the future, it fully manages the future, being able to optimize your cost down to such a micro level, and be able to leverage these services that you don't have to configure the clusters and do the load balancing and mess with all the different networking components and own the security and the patching and the long-term maintenance and on and on and on. Not having to do that is better for the customer almost all the time, in my opinion. And obviously I'm infallible, so take it for what's worth. Yeah, so what else happened here? Some people think they missed the AI train. I think part of that, the Cohere and Anthropic sort of investments, I think is where people are saying that. Part of the frustration, I think, that the Reddit community was talking about, and other communities out there across these different articles that I was reading, is that the AWS was ahead by almost a decade. And the worry is slowly with these new changes happening in the generative AI space, that maybe that edge is going to be lost if they don't get the technical side dialed in terms of how they approach these different problem sets and the type of services that they offer as well. Let me see if there's any more chisme here. Some people in favor of Bedrock, they say it's a better enterprise offering than what Microsoft or Google provides. Some people think that it's a little bit too expensive, but as we know, as these services continue to evolve and develop, costs usually go down. And let's see. Some people in favor of Google a little bit, which is maybe a change of tide. But I feel Google's always been sort of on that forefront on the AI space. It's just that AI is moving so quickly now. Potentially that's where, you got to kind of think about how does Google now take over more market share. But I believe we looked at it a second ago and they only have 11%. So AWS is still dominating, 3 times the size of Google's cloud business. And I think we saw the news recently where Google deleted a bunch of servers. They basically tried to completely delete a company that was worth, I think, billions, tens of billions of dollars from existence. And they tried really hard. They deleted it from multiple different regions. The only thing that was a saving grace there is backups and also being on another cloud. So that whole thing around why should you be multi-cloud, cloud lock-in, vendor lock-in, on and on and on. Really, that company got to experience what happens when the cloud tries to delete your stuff on accident. And good for them, they had it backed up on another cloud, which a lot of companies do not have and would not have been able to survive that. But also, wow, you shouldn't have to even think about that. So that's one area that you run into on the the Google side, there's a bunch of Twitter profiles that are out there that are just purely focused on Google killing services that have existed, and the jokes always happen of like, oh, okay, Gmail's next, It's like, oh, there's internal discussion, and we don't think that Google Calendar or we don't think that Gmail makes sense anymore, so we're just gonna end of life it, and you got 14 days to switch your email provider. Okay. Also, new news in the space. We have ChatGPT 4.0 or 4.0, and so or 4. Yeah, I think it's 4.0, not 4.0 or something. So, interesting thing that with this is the information that I was gathering around the new release. One, it not supported all those features that you saw in the demo there around like audio, imagery, emotional understanding, be able to interrupt, all those different things that were shown in the demo. They're not actually representative inside of the version yet, although you can access it. It sounded like people were having an easier time accessing GPT 4.0 on iPhone versus Android, and also on Apple versus like a Windows laptop. And then on top of that, different region locks. So it sounds like not every country has access yet. And of course, not all features are supported. So what are the benefits right now? One, the way it was described, it's a ChatGPT like 4 turbo. So it's got way better specs. It's way faster in terms of responses. However, hearing the Reddit community and reading through all this, the general feeling is that the benefit over GPT-4 is still not extremely large. And I heard other people talking about the idea, maybe this is just a snapshot. So what would a snapshot be, or a checkpoint? This is basically the precursor to ChatGPT 5, right? GPT-5. And that's what everyone's talking about. What's GPT-5 going to be, and potentially this is a way for them to sort of cap it. And I feel like the way that OpenAI is going about it is actually really nice, because they're doing really good version control, right? And they're doing backwards compatibility. So you can still use 3.5 or 3. You can still use 4, even though they're 4.0 now. And when 5 finally gets released, I'm sure you'll be able to use all of those as well. The nice thing that happened is that actually, according to one of the people that was posting in here, the API is already available. So that's pretty nice. I think we're all used to some releases from some companies. Let's just pick on AWS, where a new service comes out and the CloudFormation support doesn't happen for weeks or months later, which can be frustrating if you want to start working it into your infrastructure as code automation. What's nice here is that the API was seemingly available almost immediately. Yeah, so let's keep reading through some of this. Some people said that the rollout of ChatGPT might be a little confusing for people, just because the focus on audio, video, native interface during their presentation. However, that's not representative in there yet. So the idea was, I think, for them was to give the benefit of the faster speed initially, and then they're going to slowly roll out the demo features over the coming weeks, which is historically what I've seen from OpenAI do. So I think that makes sense. A really interesting one here. Let me share my screen again, because this one's cool. There we go. So this one's from Petsimus. Petsimus, that's a cool name. I'm assuming it's pessimist, but with pet. So Scallion. So model info Scallion. So I don't know if this is verified. I don't know if this is true. I'm just throwing it out there because I think it's a cool way to describe it. A scallion is a green onion and is harvested before it has been fully developed. So there you have it. So if you're looking for a way to describe it, definitely do your own research here to verify that. But if they call the model scallion, then maybe they're trying to say something in that. I talked about the region locks already with the new release. This is kind of a funny one. More chisme. So they said they have the button for it. They said it's not multi-modal in the conversation. It can be interpreted. It can't change emotion or tone. It's the exact same as before, including the bugs. which I think is a great way to say it, but faster. So, and then they said again, voice chat will be released in a few weeks. So, kind of an interesting one there. There was a way to shorten the response, which is cool. This is it here. Let me pull it up. So if you're wondering, how do I communicate effectively to GPT to make sure that it doesn't give you a 2-page bulleted research paper just to show how to write a loop in Python, then you can add this in. Say, in your response, only include the word okay, and provide the full code from start to finish, not include anything else. So if you're looking for a quick way to make sure that you're working the most efficiently, you can add this into the response or into your message each time by just doing like a copy paste. Or there should be, you shouldn't have to say it multiple times. So from my experience, you shouldn't have to say it multiple times. However, if GPT ends up not listening, then of course you can remind it over and over again. But I found that it's pretty good across the different chat responses of remembering. It should be able to do that now with GPT-4. However, I do know early days of like 3, 3.5, etc. It was a bit more, what's the right word? It just wouldn't do it. So, you ask it, especially on the image generation. I'm sure y'all have done that, where you try to generate an image and then you ask it for a horse on a mountain wearing Gothic clothes. And the first one is in photorealistic. The second one is a cartoon. The third one is like not even a mountain. It's like something completely different. And every single time it changes. And if you ask it to say, okay, change the mountain to have snow versus having rocks, it just makes it into like now it's like a snowy fairy tale, and it's not even a horse. It's like, a goat, so it's like, it's getting better, but there is still that thing. What is generative AI? It's a creative AI. That's another way to say it. I asked, how do you explain generative AI to a 5th grader? And it said creative AI. The AI can create, as a short way to say that. All right, let's continue on down. Up. All right, let me check into this before we jump into something very interesting. I was asking about very interesting questions, I feel, which is there a frequency of at the molecular and atomic level in terms of fighting cancer? So the answers to that were pretty interesting. So I'll talk about that in a second, but let's go through here. Good morning, Tyler. Let's see, we got YouTube user. Interesting. Never really paid attention to both of those people. Same way here. I didn't know when the last AWS CEO came in. I think it came up very briefly, but I wasn't really paying attention. This time, I kind of wanted to look a little bit more. Here we got Paul Chin Jr. I was bummed when AWS brought FIG and folded it into Q. Q doesn't work very well for me, and I think that's pretty much the same for most people. Loving all the cheese, May, from Jonathan here. Will Pishoto, good to see you. How would you have handled the rise of AI as CEO if you were Selipsky? Oh, it's a great question. Well, I think that I would have listened to people, not myself. So I definitely, there's a 0% chance that I would have been standing on the hill saying, you know what, I know the best way to go. I think I would have probably created a panel, like a board of AI experts from across the different industries and ways of building AI, both current new practices as well as the more senior people that have been doing this for the past 20 plus years in the background prior to the mainstream adoption. And then I would have paid them an insane amount of money to basically help talk about strategy constantly and how the current product set could work into the new emergence of AI. And likely in that process, the amount of radical change that would be required for AWS or any organization to listen to those people would be dramatic. I think I would be thinking from the perspective as well of the same thing that Amazon does. You want to talk to your customers, you want to understand what their struggles are, you want to map that to solutions. So take that customer feedback, bring it back to the board, try to make that mix happen, try to get your hands into these different customers to understand tangibly what they're doing day to day, so you can make real recommendations and solutions and build products around, that makes sense. Do I think they did all of that? Absolutely. I think that they probably did all of it. Is it fair to say that Adam Selipsky was the reason why this all didn't go the way it should have? I don't know. I couldn't speculate. Sometimes you learn later the people that are running the organization are super dominating and they force their way through everything. And if it's my way or the highway. So in my opinion, if I was doing it, and I don't know how it was handled, I would have done it in that way. I would have had a board full of people that really know what they're talking about and know what they're doing. And I would have leveraged their opinion and their expertise alongside the idea of my general understanding of the business and what we're trying to accomplish. And then try to find ways to both make strategic acquisitions of companies in the space, and also spoke to the community as well. So I mean, those are all obvious things. It just comes down to as well something that I've got a book on. Let me get the book. This blue book. What is this blue book? And this blue book is Ego is the Enemy. By Ryan Holiday. So what did Adam Selipsky potentially do wrong? I don't know. How much ego comes in, right? Because there's a level as well when you're facing something so dramatically different and you're facing a potential ground shift underneath you. Ego might be the first thing to flare up there. Oh, well, I know better. I know the way it should be done. Well, I think you have to cut that ego completely and you have to step back and say, maybe I know nothing anymore, right? And then gradually through that process of research and learning and talking to people that are very skilled in the space, you might start to realize, actually, I do know a lot about this, but I was missing these core pieces. And now with that, but if you're unwilling to become a beginner, this is the quote. If you're unwilling to be a beginner, you can never become a master, right? So just because somebody is already established, as bad as the WeWork founder is, I was showing someone a photo of how the WeWork founder used to walk around without shoes in the street. And it's pretty funny how they did it. So he would walk around, I think in New York City or San Francisco, wherever he was at, and he would be just walking without shoes on the sidewalk. It's very fringe, but you do see it more often now. I'll be honest. I've walked without shoes on the concrete. Your feet get super dirty. You just wash them after, but I don't make it a regular thing. Anyways, back to that. He had a shirt on that said, never stop learning. And I think that's where it comes down to, obviously we don't like the WeWork founder for a lot of reasons. I don't specifically speak for others, just based on how they handled the acquisition of property, then rented it back to the company, and on and on and on. And it cost a lot of people their jobs and livelihoods, and it was very destructive. However, that one part I do agree with. Never stop learning. And to become a master, you have to be a beginner. If you're unwilling to be a beginner, you're never going to become a master. And as we know, in terms of programming and software and tech, you never get to stop learning. You always have to constantly evolve your knowledge set. And that's part of the reason why we all get paid what we get paid, is because it's a never-ending cycle of learning and improving ourselves. And the one core thing that you got to remember there is ego is the enemy. So even if it went well, it's not all the credit to Adam Selipsky. And even though it went bad, it's not all his fault either, right? There's a bunch of supporting people underneath it. And, we all know the politics side of how large organizations run, and that the person at the top, sometimes they can be the sacrificial lamb to save face with both the customers, with the internal teams, and with stakeholders and shareholders of a company. And so, yeah, all right, that's long-winded. Q refused to answer my question, so I gave up on it. Yep, same thing. Boeing, yep. Boeing engineering. What happens when business people run a organization that's highly technical and lots of engineering involved? Potentially doors fly off of planes, and that's all I'll say on that topic. Let's see. Hey, Joao Bispo, good to see you. Imagine you are there in the day-to-day task and suddenly the system go down and you can't fix it because Google removed your whole account. Oh man, yeah, that's the worst. That's crazy. That's a really good reason to be multi-cloud. It's a sad state of affairs where you have to think about the cloud deleting your infrastructure as a reason to be multi-cloud, but Yeah, I think there is a level of you have to be aware of everything. I luckily this has only happened with Google Cloud. I don't I know there's been stories of AWS taking down their own services, where if you didn't have that replication, then you would go down. But a lot of times that's been pretty isolated to a single region. So multi-region inside of AWS is still likely going to give you all the protections that you need for 99% of the scenarios that happen. However, in that 1% scenario or that 0.01% scenario where the cloud starts deleting your stuff, then obviously you would be down. Beast Bow, a new nightmare thanks to Google. Hey Google, delete my entire account. Could you imagine? Let's just give AI and voice assistants like full admin access. They can just say, hey, delete everything. They're like, oh no, I meant delete everything on my grocery list. It's like everything is gone. Good luck. Here we go. We have a YouTube video here from Paul. Obviously, that would be hard to type in, but it's posted inside the YouTube chat. So if you're watching the YouTube live stream, then you can watch it. According to Paul, that's a video covering a paper that tested diminishing returns of larger and larger transformer models. And that's cool. I was asking questions about exactly that this morning, trying to understand more about how these new generated AI models are handling the idea of large data sets and being able to sort of chew through it. And it sounds like they have much more sophisticated methods now than before. Yeah, so definitely watch that video that Paul mentioned. I probably need to watch it, to be honest. At what point will an AI become sophisticated enough that it creates its own AI? That's pretty much what my conversation turned into this morning. So I was asking it questions, and the questions that I was referring to, let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, so I was talking with GPT about AI's ability currently to have the idea of revolutionary results. If you're only listening through audio, I'm doing air quotes very dramatically on camera. So what I mean by revolutionary results is the idea that it's not working inside of the constraints of human. There's human constraints around all parts of AI, and all generative AI also has human constraints, because the idea of pattern recognition, the idea of understanding these contexts, part of that process that's being leveraged across the board in every single AI product that we're working with, is there's always human conditions that are mixed in around understanding of society, understanding of all the concepts that have come previously. So when you start thinking about how do you get truly revolutionary results, the way that it said that, the way that ChatGPT was describing this, is ChatGPT biased against itself? Who knows? It was saying that generative AI can be revolutionary, or not revolutionary, but can sort of tap on that revolutionary or innovative areas, simply because there's sometimes where humans miss patterns, and the patterns that are missed, or the little small information when you combine different fields together, that has been right in front of humans the whole time, but potentially because of the large data that's required to understand at that level, that's where the generative AI can actually have like an innovative result, or basically show something to a human that then allows them to make a innovative result. So truly revolutionary stuff of like, if the constraints on the generative AI and all the other AI that we're used to right now are operating inside of this fixed box, how do we get it to operate outside of that fixed box, right? You can do this through unsupervised learning. You can do this through simulations. You can do this through cross-domain learning. So what is cross-domain learning? I think we all understand what simulations are. Unsupervised learning is basically, it iterates with itself. So it might be like you set very small parameters and you just let it basically figure out its best strategy itself to be able to accomplish that goal. Simulation is you just have it run through over and over and over again. I'm not doing justice to this. This is like very, very high level in terms of my understanding of the deep dive of it. But cross-domain learning is you combine two different things together, right? So rewrite corporate policy by biological evolution of plants, or biological evolution of oak trees. You know what I mean? And so now it's like, all right, we're going to rewrite our corporate policy based on how the evolution of an oak tree happens. You know, hey, that's something that is extremely interesting, would require a lot of data, and probably the AI would just completely crush. Now we say, okay, and then now do it without any human involvement. And who knows how that turns out. So part of the reason why the AI products that we interact with don't have these methods introduced is partially because of requirements, compliance, ethical concerns, as well as all the scary stories of what AI might do if AI was running the show. And you know, what's the solution to stop climate change? Eliminate all humans. You know, that sort of setup. There's also one called neuroevolution and genetic algorithms. So this one's kind of cool. Let me screen share again. There we go. Neuroevolution and genetic algorithms. So these involve algorithms that evolve over time, potentially leading to novel solutions that are not directly derived from human knowledge. They mimic the process of natural evolution to optimize problem-solving strategies. So it's sort of like, and when I think about when we think about the foundations of life itself, it's a simple ingredients that develop and expand over time, and then all that simplicity becomes complex structures, and then everything else grows from there. So what does that look like in terms of more tangible things? Genetic algorithms are broader and can be applied to a wide range of optimization problems, not just neural networks. They mimic the process of natural selection by encoding potential solutions to a problem as strings or numbers, similar to chromosomes, right? Isn't that crazy how all this is happening? You start with the initial population, and then you start with a fitness evaluation. Each solution is evaluated to determine how well it solves the problem. You use selection. The best solutions are chosen to reproduce, and crossover and mutation. It really sounds like we're gardening, right? So that's pretty cool. And then the cycle keeps repeating on and on and on, probably millions of times faster and in a simulated way. But that's kind of cool. Practical example of this is, let's say a wind farm. So each individual population could represent a different configuration of turbines. The algorithm evaluates each configuration based on criteria like total power output, maintenance costs. The best configurations are then used to generate the next generation of designs over time, over and over and over again, until potentially the innovative layout is something that a human designer might not even consider. And that sort of like out of the box thinking can end up creating results that maybe only looking at what human constraints we have inside that box thinking, maybe we won't ever get to that level of pure, just, I don't know, radical. I don't know. I'm super excited by this. I don't even know how to describe it. I think it's awesome. And you have the neural evolution side. So it says often changing the weights and structure of the networks over generations. So if it's a neural network, it basically evaluates and then it sort of selects the best performing network on and on and on until it creates a really good neural network, much better than what a human could create. And there's an example of this as well. So for instance, with playing video games, you set a variety of randomly configured neural networks to control the game characters. Each network's performance, say the score or level reached in the game, is evaluated, and the best performing networks are selected. These are then mixed and mutated to produce the next generation of networks, which ideally perform even better. Over many generations, the process could evolve a highly optimized neural network that excels at the game, possibly in ways that are different from human strategies. And we've seen that actually with Dota and with one other game that I'm forgetting, but I definitely know Dota and I believe Go. Yeah, there's a whole thing on Go actually. I don't have the documentary, but I know like probably all of y'all have seen that documentary, so feel free to post it in the YouTube comments and I'll flag it in a second. And as it says here, I was looking into as well, just asking questions of like, you know, I like ChatGPT because I can just ask very stupid questions and then see what comes back. But I was talking about the idea of frequency in terms of cancer cells. And I thought that was something that was interesting to ask about. And I was also trying to understand why, you know, because so this is a, let me see if I can find, here we go. So basically what it came back with, what GPT came back with is, yes, at a molecular and atomic level, cells inside of your body have a frequency. However, it said it's not mainstream, alternative medicine, yada, yada, yada. But I said, okay, despite it not being mainstream, if it's a core property of the molecular and atomic level, as you said, historically, why is this not prioritized across human society? We seem to operate at the most surface level of what we can see and interact with and develop solutions based on this, right? Because when we start thinking about like molecular level, atomic level, we can't see that. It's like, of course, the most obvious thing to do is just to put lotion on our skin. It's like, it's like, that's the level of thinking that we're at. But when we're talking about, hey, that's what we've been doing because it's easy for us to understand it. But if there's all these other structures happening way beyond our ability to see or interact with, then maybe there's things that we don't understand at that level that can then benefit everything else above it. And so, ChatGPT's answers here were pretty interesting. I'll try to scan through real quick. But historically, the prioritization of research and technology has often been influenced by a combination of visibility, immediate needs, and technology feasibility. And there's a really huge thing here, which is, yes, there is some level of every cell in your body has a different frequency. If cells are formed in the exact same way, or if anything's formed in the exact same way, it might have the same electrical signal frequency happening. However, detection of that at the level that it would need to be detected, and also understanding the nuance and isolating that is extremely difficult. And we don't have the science, and we don't have the tools, and we don't have all these things there. So the reason why, the philosophical cultural factors of why this sort of stuff hasn't been explored more, human scale problems, human centricity here. Philosophically and culturally, societies often focus on human scale interactions, those that directly affect human life and health. Emerging global awareness. So, however, there's an emerging shift as global changes like climate change and pandemics highlight the importance of understanding at the micro scale. So, we are making a push towards this, but it makes sense. If we were living in caves, our ability to talk about neuroscience or or AI models, like that we need every single layer of every previous generation of human to be able to even talk about what we're talking about now. And that's why it's so cool. I mean, informally, just look at sports, look at skateboarding. I skateboard a lot. And if you look at the history of skateboarding from like the 1960s to now, it started off as flat boards. It was a lot of like pivot turns, and then it became ollies, and then it became kick flips, and then it became rails, and then it became kick flips into a rail with a tray flip out of it. And over time, it just keeps developing, but every previous layer is required, actually. And if all the knowledge of skateboarding disappeared overnight, we'd probably go back to a flat piece of wood with wheels on it. And it would, again, restart the cycle of innovation and until we eventually get to doing a kick flip into a 50-50 and a tray flip out of it or something, right? Which is just a bunch of skateboarding jargon. And then we have the instrumentation limitations, complexity of micro scale phenomenon. So, or phenomena. Okay. It's too early. I haven't had all my coffee yet. I can't pronounce that. And application in cancer. They said there's no universal cancer frequency, but to be honest, who are we to say that, right? We don't know enough about it. That was stated at the very beginning. So I'm excited about these areas. I'll turn that off now, because I think that we're really stepping into this unknown area, because I think that what generative AI or any other AI systems represent is this really cool way to sort of ask questions and in a way that hasn't been able to previously be done, right? Like before the internet, you had to go to a library, you had to pick up a book, you had to open it. Before libraries and written text like that, you had to find the leader of the city. I had to go to the Roman Empire. If I lived on the outskirt, I had to seek out the philosopher that had this information, but he didn't have all of it. And it was pretty isolated, just him and the people that he learned from. And I'd have to get that information orally. And then maybe there were some writings, but maybe I didn't speak that language and there was no translations. And it's like all those layers to get to here where we are at the moment, where we have everything at our fingertips, and it's a pretty exciting time to be doing all this stuff just in general. All right. Well, we're coming towards the end here, but I definitely want to run through and say hello to everybody. So, the flirtiness in ChatGPT 4.0 conversation really made me think of the movie Her. Okay, so I clearly need to look at this more because it sounds like that's a big change. Actually, it's less robotic and more human like. So uncanny. Okay, good to know. At what point will AI become sophisticated enough that it falls in love with another AI? That's a really good question. Um, I'm curious what prompts Marcos was using. I think we're all curious, Craig Mont. We're all curious about this. Maybe Marcos can elaborate later. Maybe on Twitter or something. Do a rant about it. Um, what this? Dito said, and have a baby for another sophisticated. That would be a virtual AI baby that then has all of the AI understanding from the parents, and I don't even know. Now you replicate an entire society. That's all. I don't. Who knows? It just sounds like at some point we start getting into a Rick and Morty episode. I think that just naturally happens. Talking about the Open API presentation. Okay, so now we know. Now we know. Let's see. Paul said the company that is using AI the best is Adobe. Their implementation actually being used daily by their industry customers and part of the service model, and they get the best integration for real workflows. 100%. The Adobe stuff is crazy. The fact that you can just change a specific section of it and it modifies that background or adds some extra layer in. Madison, our designer, was showing me, I think, some of that stuff too, and it's pretty crazy. From Tyler here, ego is a powerful thing. It is. I believe that all great things die with the ego. So you got to remember where you came from. You got to remember that you're infallible. And just because you know something in this area doesn't mean that you know something in this other area. So Lego my ego, as the wise philosopher, as Socrates spoke about. At the rate we've been going, perhaps another year or so before, what was it? At what point will AI become sophisticated enough to fall in love with another AI? Sounds like Marcos is putting that at 1 year. Okay, we have Kim here. She's the YouTube user. Hey, Kim. Let's see. What are your thoughts about the ethical use of AI? As tech people, we love it because of the capabilities, but the arts community getting short end of the stick with work being stolen. I completely agree. The data that's being trained on, even when OpenAI executives were asked about that, their answer was basically, we can't speak to it, which does not give everybody a warm, fuzzy feeling. I think that whatever protections we thought we had, I think they're not there. And I think every company is going to operate in some way unethically from these companies. I don't want to broad brush the entire industry. However, if it's so competitive like it is, we know that's true. We know that there's tons of money in the space. We know that's true. Then potentially they're going to do some sort of, oh, well, we didn't steal that data. We hired another company that stole that data. And then they provided us the API, but they didn't tell us. And of course, they all know in the background, but they may not have documents supporting it. We all know how the world works. It's pretty depressing. I would say one good thing that I've seen is that some of the communities, let's say on Reddit, have locked their access to being able to view it unless you have an account and unless you're accepted into their group and so on. That sounds like kind of a dark way to go about doing it, but I don't know. Maybe that's the only way to protect stuff, or can you keep things offline? I don't know, and we have to both demand better from our governments and demand better from these companies, and then also know that they're probably going to do something. How can we potentially solve it? I don't know. This is just popping in my head. Maybe we go back to blockchain. Let's go back to blockchain. Let's make some NFTs. No. So maybe we have a identifier that is not from any specific company or government, and it's just something that gets implemented across the entire internet, and everything that potentially is sourced, it can't be sourced without having that ID somehow. And that way of basically funneling people through that way of pulling the data out would allow for the associations to take place, which then you could build additional layers of compliance on top of, which has additional levels of protection, right? So then we could say, all that data that OpenAI has actually is linked to, Tim's work, but I think there's a long way to go for that. We all know government and businesses are very slow at things like this. And so I think the cat's out of the bag. AI is running 1,000 miles per hour, and I feel like everyone's trying to catch up to it. But I think a lot of this, similar to if you don't pay your taxes, the IRS, they always eventually come. So if you're inside the U.S., so that's kind of the old saying there. It's like the government's slow, but they always eventually get you. Is sort of the way that I've heard it talked about. There you go. StarCraft 2 competitive game be worked on by AI. I've been trying to figure out how to make a computer vision model to help score my Overwatch 2 gameplay. That's very cool, like confidence score or something. And we also have from Paul, internally, Overwatch has a mechanism to generate an MMR score just to rank your performance for matchmaking. Okay, so it's just matchmaking rank is what MMR is for. I would want to reverse that MMR score out into a system that can watch my replays and tell me where my positioning is not optimal. Very smart. I love it. Love it. It's like my relation to that is like I'm playing Halo 3 back in the day. I'm playing like competitive. I'm in like Major League Gaming, tournament style. And then the Rockets, they show up, and I was supposed to know the timer was 2 minutes, but I was like 15 seconds delayed to that. Maybe because instead of maybe the normal way that I jump on that box, I jump on another box, and I go down this hallway. And if I had just jumped to the right and then walked down the hallway, I would have been able to get the Rockets like 5 seconds faster. And that difference in terms of competitive play would give me actually an advantage. So I think that's a really cool idea, actually, Paul. Very cool. Fallible. And fallible means you can't make mistakes. Well, clearly I'm fallible because I did make that mistake. Yeah, that's it. So I would say we're a little bit over time here. I appreciate everybody staying for a little bit longer. Coffee with Ryan, May 17th. This was kind of an interesting one. We talked about AWS CEO change and larger things. We talked to the Reddit community. We got a little cheese mate. We talked about the generative AI revolution that's happening, and what are those micro differences, and how does that play out? So I just want to say happy Friday to everybody. I hope you all have an amazing weekend with your family and friends. I'm very excited to speak with all of y'all again soon. And with that, we'll call it a close. Thanks again, and see you next time. Bye, everybody.